sir. Let us be orderly. EDIC's mission, as a reminder, is to support and enhance the economic environment for current and future businesses, residents, and the community at large. Did everyone have a chance to read August 20th meeting minutes that Josh took quite beautifully?
Did, yes.
Outstanding. Any
Correction?
errata that we need to correct?
Turned out at me.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve.
I second that motion.
Outstanding. All in favor of approving the August 20th, 2019 meeting minutes? Holler aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Great. You abstained, you weren't here. Yeah, he can't. I mean, you could have read them, but sure.
I'm not voted in yet.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
I'm nobody.
Oh, you're not nobody.
You're observing.
Voteless Cassie. Until next time. No one public is here, except for Cassie. You're welcome to speak if you have anything to say or share with the group. So, Mo isn't going to be here. She's cram planning a conference thing. So Chris is also not here. Way to go, folks. I give the task and you don't show. So, did everyone have a chance to read the downtown planning report?
Sure
That
did.
was some pretty good reading.
It was really
Yeah.
interesting.
I liked it. Let us discuss. So are there, is there something that really stood out to you that we should be paying attention to given the conversation we had last time about experience-based businesses and opportunities in Easthampton, owner-occupied spaces, small businesses? What really stood out to you about what we read? You have an idea, I can tell.
I just have to be careful because like I was just reading something, Dave pointed out, I didn't read the last half of the sentence, so I have to be careful.
Okay.
But when not necessarily specific to business, but, and I just printed the pages where something did jump out at me.
Sure.
One thing was, that sort of dovetails with a report that UMass did last year for the Council on Aging. The population is growing older and at a rapid pace.
Yep.
Creating opportunities to introduce new housing types and build a market of retirees with expendable income.
Yep.
So I was speaking to someone yesterday, older person, getting ready to move, living in her own home today, and she's going to Lathrop. And I said, oh great, congratulations, Lathrop's a great spot, you'll do well there. I'm waiting for an opening.
Yeah.
See, I had no idea Lathrop was full.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
waiting for an opening. So, you know, how long does she wait before Westfield, Southwick, Agawam look more appealing than waiting for a place? Is she going to wait through the winter? I don't know. You know, so, and I know I'm dredging up a bunch of old stuff that we can't fix overnight, but, you know, Chuck had an open house right in your front yard Sunday. He had 40 people show up for a house that's listed at $399. Wow.
Wow.
You want to talk about pent-up demand.
Yeah.
40 people showed up. Now, if half of them were just there to look and see what it looked like, there were 20 people looking for a house.
Well, there's 3 offers over asking price. Not crazy over, but they're, you know.
So there's a huge pent-up demand for housing, and the report goes on to talk about businesses that might be looking to move to Easthampton and talk about you know, housing for employees, things like that. I also thought it was interesting that, and again, if I read it right, I apologize if I missed it, but 58 new households in Easthampton in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
58 new households in the last 5 years.
New structures?
That was the wording that it said, 58 new households in the last 5 years.
Was that the last 5, or was that projected over the next 5?
I think that was 2012 to 2017.
Yeah, the last 5. Okay.
Yeah. But that's unclear if that means structures or people.
No, a household is a
Unit?
unit.
I figured it had units myself.
But I would think there'd be more than that in the last 5 years.
Can I ask about the housing study? You got monies for that?
We applied for them.
Applied for them, okay.
We'll
Yeah,
know
we
it.
did hear, you know, I consistently check with the grant administrators to find out like when things might be awarded. And he said a couple more weeks, which is, that's like a notorious.
Okay.
But he said that our application scored very highly.
Right.
And then he asked if we could split it into next fiscal year too. Sure, those are promising signs in my opinion that
Something's coming our way.
we would hope so, yes.
Just because that would dovetail in with these findings kind of thing,
Well, I think it, right, and again, like not that, I don't consider it dredging up, I think it's just kind of reiterating and building the pattern, which is even the Council on Aging study was not a full housing market needs
Right.
assessment, nor was this. So these two pieces are continuing to point that we need this
Yep.
data point, which we applied for grant funding for this. And again, to remind everybody that the grant funding is the market needs assessment, housing market needs assessment, and methods and options to actually create the zoning that we would need based on those findings, so.
And I understand, Josh, the low number of new units in the sense that, the population of Easthampton has been around 16,000 as long as I can remember. So you have to remember that we have a lot of residents who pass away every year.
True.
I have to believe that the death rate is much higher than the birth rate, but yet there are new people moving in.
Yeah.
But then it's the multi-generational households too. So I look at my own family unit. So for 30 years, my wife and I and 5 children, 7 people in a population lived in the same household. 4 of my 5 kids live in Easthampton. We didn't change the number. But
That's right.
But now they're in their own household units.
Okay.
But we didn't change the number of the population.
It does say 58 projected for the next 5 years.
Okay. That scared me a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, Cassie, what are your thoughts?
When I'm with you, when I read this, it just screamed continuing care retirement community, more than Lathrop, the kind that has a skilled nursing facility and moves up the continuum of care where you buy in. There's nothing in, I know because I was actually looking for one when I moved out here, for you to buy into that's of that nature. If these are wealthy, older people, bring them on in, let them age up, and the jobs, so many jobs, skilled and unskilled. Stick them near a golf course,
Yeah.
done. Sorry.
Can I interrupt for a moment? Can we turn volume off on phones? I'm hearing tinkling.
Yeah,
Is that possible?
I have to apologize, I have a family member in the hospital, so if
Okay.
I could just, I'm trying to
Okay.
figure it out, but.
Okay.
I really liked the way they defined the business makeup of Main Union Cottage.
Yeah.
Cottage Street's dominated by restaurants, artist spaces, a variety of retailers. Union Street has a wider diversity of businesses, restaurants, salons, medical office. Main Street, business oriented with offices, banks. It's just, I like the way they sort of put their arms around all 3 distinct. And as I was reading through it, I said, wait a minute, what about Pleasant Street? But then as you go on, it talks more about Pleasant Street and One Ferry when that comes online, as taking a look at what that will contribute. The only other thing, last thing was, I saw one thing that made me question a number, but then I saw something on another page that seemed to contradict it. So on page 23, I think it is, sorry if I have my page wrong, somewhere it refers to 148 rental units available for rent, which I questioned that number. But then on page 26, it says, demand for existing rental units is strong with minimal vacancy experienced in the current market. So 148 is not minimal in my mind, and I don't think there's 148 rental units available in Easthampton.
No.
no.
And they seem to be a little bit, not confused, but questioning the shift of owner-occupied to rental. And that's not really hard to figure out. If you take all of New City, as those owners move on and an investor buys the house, it becomes not owner-occupied. So today you might have an owner living on one side and renting out the other. The owner decides to sell and go wherever. If anyone around this table bought it, it's going to become a non-owner occupied rental unit. So that shift doesn't surprise me at all. But again, the biggest plus I gave was I love their description of the three main business districts.
Yeah.
One thing, comment, it was a little confusing, because when I heard households, I assumed like a structure or whatever, but there is a line here that says, given the shift toward an older demographic and wealthier households, it is likely new households will have a propensity to purchase homes. So I'm taking it households means like group of people, which is a family
Or more
individual.
Or money people.
More money
More money to people who can afford to buy it instead of rent.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
certainly. And there was that other part of the report too, showing the increase in residents making over $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
And if you got a house on the market for 400, then
Unless something came online.
Housing units.
Yeah,
We
unless
talked
something came
about
online for a minute.
I was just showing Dave what I pointed out that it is on page 23 where it says the number of housing units classified as vacant for rent increased from 45 in 2012 to 148 in 2017.
That's gotta be.
I'd love to know where they got that 148 from, because
Yeah.
when I checked about rentals, there's just none available.
Well, and it has to be out of context. I mean, it could easily be the right number if it was 148 units throughout the year, as opposed to one moment.
Like turnover, you said.
Yeah, and so I guess it just needs a little bit of flushing out.
So another thing that kind of stuck out to me that I almost wonder if it's like typo, It said that from 2012 to 2017, our total population grew by 0.1%, which is about 16 people. And then it says projected 2017 to 2018 plus 4.6%, which would be 800 people.
Why the difference?
Why the difference?
I think because we have some
6.
100 and something units coming on Ferry Street.
Oh, this is 20 to 28. I'm sorry, I read this 2017 to 2018. I'm like, that's already over. We should know.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, maybe it's like fiscal. Or
And because we are talking about
But I've seen it.
some sort of large assisted living facility.
Mhm.
So I think that's where, I mean, it took us how long to go from 16,000 to 17,000? 15 years?
We're not at 17.
No.
Yeah. 17.
We're
In
just,
1980, we were at
according to
15.
this report.
But-
We
but-
issued another liquor license based on 17,000 people.
Whoa.
And a lot of people died.
2017 population of Easthampton was estimated to be 16,051 people.
That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, that's 2 years
in
ago.
general.
Because when we had another liquor license.
No,
after that,
we were,
it's
for
triggered
a
by
long
every
time, we were at
1,000 people.
15,000, and I think, I don't know which election it was, but we hit 16,000. But it mirrors Hampshire County. I mean, Hampshire County is the only county in Western Mass that has a net positive.
Yeah.
I mean, Franklin and Berkshire have a big drop, and Hampden County, actually, the drop is not that bad. But, I think Easthampton is reflective of the Hampshire County growth.
And I'm not suggesting that we have to grow our population for some unspecified reason to 20,000 people, but it's more about, people who age out of their homes, meaning youth. They're probably looking outside of Easthampton because where are they going to look? And it's more about keeping that number at 16 and not having it fall back.
Well, and the thing about growth, though, is if you look at it from a organism point of view, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Exactly.
It's just, so, I mean, I'm not, it's not a, meaning that we have to pay over paradise and grow, but you have to grow a certain amount.
Yeah, and I wish I knew the numbers, but like you said about attracting the seniors, I think Lathrop is made up of, I'm going to take a wild guess and say 50% people from out of the area.
Almost,
So
yeah.
they move in, with no disrespect, they move in with their checkbooks and they're shopping at Big E's and they're buying gas, whatever, and going out to the restaurants and doing whatever. So economically, they're spending their money here.
Yeah. Now, when you heard a waiting list, is that for the townhouses or for the inn? Or
Not
both?
sure, not sure.
Okay.
Just know that she's waiting on a list to get in. Knowing this person and her health, it's not the inn.
Okay.
She doesn't need any kind of assistance.
Yeah, when my
Still
father-in-law was there were often vacancies in the inn,
Yeah.
but still a substantial waiting list for the.
And where'd your father-in-law come from?
Florida. Yeah, definitely.
Our point.
Your point taken, yeah.
And if there was nothing available at Lathrop, he probably would have taken a look at Westfield or Southwick. You know, just, I mean, it's not that far of a drive to get to West, some of those, Westfield's got like 4 of them, I think.
Yeah.
Arbors, and I can't remember them all, but anyway, we beat housing to death, but we need housing.
No, I think it's good.
Is Ferry Street going to be an assisted living?
No, Ferry Street, there's some potential for variation. I mean, the most consistent expectation is that it'll be all market rate. The developer has been trying to get into the Mass Housing's Workforce Housing Initiative program. So it's a process that he's been attempting for the past 2 years. And it's a program that they have to be accepted, the project has to be accepted. And if he is accepted, then it would be between 20 and 40 workforce housing units. And so that's our most ideal scenario, where there'd be 20 to 40
What's a
units.
workforce?
Generally speaking, it's like a sliding scale of income, so it's
Okay.
mixed. It's a mixed set of income levels that start at or below 80% of the median. So that's the technical definition of an affordable unit.
Yep.
So the numbers that we heard early on were that if the funding comes through for it, it would be 4 sort of deed restricted affordable units, and then the rest would be just above 80% to 120%, which is considered workforce housing, which is it's an income level that is still below market rate.
I heard recently that, again, all rumor, Jeff, that was shifting from apartments to condos.
Yeah, I mean, I think we never really defined the ownership of the market rate units, so it could very
Just
well
heard
be
that
rental
recently,
or
there might be
ownership
condos
units.
now.
Yeah.
Oh.
But from what I heard, I think the clarifying the reference to 148 vacant rental units, I think that's definitely worth a note to the consultant to clarify that. And then I just wanted to remind the group that this takes some data from the entire town, obviously, but it was really intended to show that there would be a market, and this is what it appears to show, is that there would be a market for housing for one or all 3 of the school properties. So it's really intended to show that there would be, the suitable market
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the redevelopment of those properties for housing. And obviously there's a call out for retail
Yeah.
and experience-based uses, but I think part of it was to determine that there is a market for housing.
On the experience-based uses, I think, we're all in agreement that, online shopping has changed the retail market, and this is what we go for. But when you stop back and take a look and you say to yourself, okay, I own a shop, and I want to get an experience-based business, I either want to open one or I want to rent one to one.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, okay, well, what do you have in mind? And then, as you think that through, then I think you have to kind of, from our vantage, broaden what are the experiences, and obviously one of them is the boardwalk. So I guess what I'm saying is some of the experience is accessory or in complement to businesses.
Right.
And not trying to shift the burden onto the city, but there's other parts of it. It's not just a business that's experiential, it's
Right.
the setting.
Sure, and as it goes to the quality of life, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that is what we have seen as part of the desirability is
Yeah.
not just things like the boardwalk, so that's an infrastructure project that has been great and we've activated it. The rail trail is another sort of unique feature that we have, and we keep building on it and encouraging its continuous sort of evolution.
Yeah.
The bike share, get the businesses that have seemingly kind of drawn closer to the bike
Right.
trail have all contributed to people wanting to be here. So I think that's totally a positive.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's, Casey made a point at one meeting, just, offhand, that when the Millside concerts,
That's another one, yeah. Yep.
well, I witnessed that 2 Saturdays ago. I was coming up to a town and I thought, it seemed like Cottage Street was an art walk. It wasn't. It was buzzing. And then I was going to Cumberland Farms. and from Hoyle Street. And then, but as soon as I hit Big E's, there was a void. And I went down, because I was a little bit frustrated coming up, driving, just being a little bit cranky. So I said, well, I want to go down Pleasant and O'Neill to Cumberland Farms. And then I said, oh, Jesus, it was, I see the sandwich boards, I see people walking, and I'm clueless. And then I realized, oh, there's something going on behind the mills. And then Ferry Street's parked all the way up to the bad intersection, and so I'm not trying to make a negative. I'm just saying, obviously that was good. So we need to provide that, I guess, with city space or Old Town Hall to help empty that void, because it seems like the restaurants are attracting, but there's other things attracting as well. I guess I'm saying I'm just nervous about experience-based businesses being in 1,200 square feet. What are you going to experience in 1,200 square feet?
And I think, Dave, that...
No, you can. There are things. I mean, you have to be creative and open-minded. It's just what you can't purchase on Amazon readily is going to be in 1,200 square feet.
When you go back to how the study described those three distinct districts, you kind of understand that void where you described it. So you have other than Casey and Cocoa, Main Street basically goes dark after dark.
Yeah, that's what's about 6 o'clock. So
you've got real estate agents, you've got insurance company, you've got banks.
And you've got daytime restaurants.
And Silver Spoon, those places. So it does go dark in that area. Old Town Hall, city space is probably gonna, certain nights of the week, you can't park anywhere around that because of what's going on there. But there was another section, I didn't print it, that talked about how much business comes into town for arts, restaurants, retail, and retail almost didn't make a number because, and we were talking about that at our last meeting about who cares if you can buy a pair of socks in Easthampton. It's about, I wrote it down, the Easthampton experience. That's what's, and I think Casey threw that, that's what's, you're coming here for the experience of the art scene, the restaurants, an ice cream and walk the boardwalk, or
Things you can't get on
ride your bike. Right, things you can't get on Amazon. Oh, by the way, you might stop into one of our stores and buy something, but if the residents of Easthampton have to go out of town to buy a pair of socks, okay, we can't support a sock store.
Right.
That's okay, because you're gonna come in for the experience.
I think the evolution of Northampton was that it just had so much window shopping to do to go with the other experiences.
Yeah.
Right.
And as the markets have shifted, through the retail, it's just sort of a dying thing, and that's what Northampton sort of experiences,
Right.
is that we just don't have that critical mass of fun place to be, that you get some paid things and some free things.
Right. Well, they go to the restaurant and they go home.
Yeah.
There is, I think you touched on it, there is a bigger picture too, and so it's not just to focus on experience-based businesses. You don't put all your eggs in that basket. So I think if you look at the composition of Union Street, it's still providing really common goods and services that residents want. So you want the residents to be able to come. So, right, hardware store, the gas station, a dry cleaners,
Totally agree.
CVS.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, Ready, but you have to have those too. So it's all the balance. And I think if you look even bigger, is we have, and I think Gwen and I were just chatting about this, but we have, it's rather anecdotal, but we have a lot of existing businesses that are choosing to expand within Easthampton. And so that's something that, the EDIC could be involved with in the future, is helping people understand, like when adhesive applications, a big corporation decides to expand in Easthampton and create more jobs, or we have, a business like River Valley Market who chooses to locate here. We have a diverse set
Right.
of things that are, contributing to the overall economy. So
I totally
not
agree
just
with
one,
you.
right?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think what happens is when local residents want to harp about retail, they'll always use socks or ties as an example. They'll pick out the two things you can't buy in town. But you're right. In Manchester's dollar store, whatever, some of the other retail places around are going to fill. If I need 10 screws, I can go to Manchester's and get them. I'm not going to drive to Home Depot.
Right.
But
Right.
who cares if you can't buy a pair of socks in Easthampton?
Right.
Someone's probably not going to open a clothing store in Easthampton. I don't think that's going to hurt us.
No, and the one in Southampton couldn't survive.
Right.
So
Right.
You're right.
it just tells you that it's
Yeah.
supply and demand based decisions.
Yeah.
So this report is saying that as far as supply and demand goes, demand for clothing is pretty low. It's at 13.8 million is what they evaluate, and our supply is at 1 million. You know, but like you said, if you have to go out of town to buy a pair of socks, it's not the end of the world, right?
Right.
But what really was the biggest gap here was in general merchandise, which was a demand of 33.3 and a supply of 2.4 million.
What's general merchandise?
Hardware store.
Like wine glasses or?
Towels.
Do they break out food separately from general merchandise?
Well, they have groceries,
Okay.
that's a separate thing.
You know the saying, Manchester's motto is, if Manchester doesn't have it, you don't need it. So, I mean,
Well, you know, here's an example. You know, we have in Easthampton, we have 3 hardware stores
Yeah.
basically. I mean, there's a Flurry Lumber,
Yeah.
Manchester, and Aubuchon.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I try and buy as much as I can
absolutely.
locally.
Yep.
Big stuff, big purchases, I'll probably go down to Home Depot, although I built a deck 5 years ago, and that was a substantial cost. And I waited how much more I was going to spend by doing it locally, and it was worth it to me. Worth it to me just to be a good guy, but also not having to go all the way over there every time I needed something.
So you can get smart like me and just pay somebody to do it, and they buy it.
That's how you only
That's what I learned. I used to be the guy that schlepped it, now I learned. I just signed the check.
You see, it took me so long to learn that.
Yeah,
So long to learn.
yeah, no.
I know.
Well, I did hire someone to help.
Yeah.
I know the contractor I use shops exclusively at Flurry Lumber.
Yeah.
Flurry Lumber can sell you, order in, they won't have it there, everything you would need to build a house.
Right.
Yeah.
And
You
they
can go through Flurry Lumber.
Yeah.
So could we, would you want to see a clarification of that to understand more, potential supportable area in the general merchandise category, better suited for a larger format chain box store such as Target, Walmart, or other department store formats, where you can get all the things?
So my comment on that would only be that they're offering that as though that could be a potential way for us to address that imbalance, but I also feel like those things would be very unpopular. And so
But it
I
also
don't think they're
does-
suggesting that that's an option for us. I think they're saying that sort of category is better suited for that format.
sure,
But they, I mean, our, called master plan
Yes.
specifically said in 2008,
No big box.
residents do not want big box stores. And we've been very consistent in addressing that.
Right.
You can go less than 20 miles in any direction here to Walmart.
Yep.
You don't need one in Easthampton, obviously.
Right.
You can go 20 miles in 3 different directions here to Home Depot.
Yep.
Yeah, well, the other thing, when I read that quickly, I was just wondering, but I was keen on the word leakage. So I think they mean leakage out of the Eastham community. But in a sense, if that leakage is to Foster, this Foster Farms is not a good example because it's a hardware store. But if that leakage is to Ted's Boot Shop, it's still our area.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Regionally.
yeah, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Well, I started to wonder too, like, so if it's a bit of a conscious choice that we either, I think we continue to make as a community that whereas retail is a known gap, but we're filling that gap by other sort of, you know, uses are filling that gap, and I wonder if the general merchandise is the same kind of acknowledgement where, you know, we as residents might choose to travel for some of those things in exchange for having a different set of uses, or, you know, like the bulk of uses on Union Street or on Route 10 that
Right.
can fulfill most of those needs.
Yeah, I think it's
So
okay.
It's not clear that we got direction out of that, but
More
I think it's more of the
information.
data.
But I think it's okay if a family goes to Walmart in Northampton to buy the socks and then comes back to Easthampton to go out to eat and get an ice cream and walk on the boardwalk.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So they're gonna go for that need, but they're gonna come back for the experience.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Are there other thoughts about this report that we absolutely have to get out of our bodies and brains right now?
Does this drive support for housing for the soon-to-be vacant school buildings, some of, or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's intended to reflect that the potential reuse of the buildings could support a mix of uses. So it could support housing or it could support general merchandise of some sort, but then I think then I think you pare it down to the next level of analysis, which is like architecturally, what could they be, renovated into, and what are the criteria there, and how would that work? And then the third level is, the community expectation for those buildings. My hope is that all of you could attend the last session in October, because I think it's really going to be the synthesis of where they're at with the findings. What they're talking about is, that, Maple Street, given its building characteristics and its locational experience, might be best suited for this type of thing. And then Pepin, there's community goals, around an intergenerational use, keeping the gym, which would then drive center to be something like housing or something. And then there's all these vice versas, and then you're just moving the cups around. But one of the things that we get out of this is a set of criteria that will help the next round of, some kind of committee that continues to work on the disposition of the schools. Will give them some framework to go off of. So
Are the schools addressed in here? I'm not so sure I picked up on that.
No.
They're not?
I don't
This
think
is it's a foundational sort of fact-finding mission that then the sounding board draft recommendations and criteria we can talk about
I
very
think
briefly next.
Right, and I think the way it will work is there's going to be a downtown strategic plan document. And then there'll be a couple appendices. So I think this would be in the appendices, which would probably drive some of the commentary, that some of the recommendations will be lodged in this data to show that, housing could be supported.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we discovered as we were on the listening to the sounding board, was that, we heard a lot about parking.
Yeah.
And we sort of asked, well, what is the view on parking? And they said it's really not the need. And so we sort of were saying, well, why was it such an issue? And it was because we looked at the people that were contributing all this information were primarily residents, and maybe longer term residents.
Right.
And they see the shift, so they think, oh, I used to have a lot of parking, but now I don't. And they don't see it as an issue from an outside perspective. They say that's city living. City living is, you walk a couple of blocks to park. So that's some of the information is sort of retained from the people that were there, and I think that it's still shaping, right? There's still a little bit of shaping involved.
And I'm okay with walking a couple blocks. I guess the logic used to be, if I can't see the front door from where I'm parking, there's a parking problem.
Yeah.
And obviously walking a couple blocks is okay, but find me the couple blocks to park from on Union Street.
Yeah, they did acknowledge that some areas have parking and it's underutilized. In other areas, it's highly utilized and there's not quite enough. So
But it's
they,
private.
or it's private.
We
And
talked
so
about
there-
that.
I
there's
mean,
definitely
Union
some.
Plaza, I could park in Union Plaza and walk up to Lavera Cruzana, but I'm not really parking legally.
No, Jeff said that they put out signs as soon as you put up the bike share that you can't park there.
Yeah.
So it's
So there's some stuff that would need to happen down the road if we were going to maximize what could be available to the public by building and maintaining positive relationships with local business owners and saying it would be a mutual benefit to the city and to you if you could make this parking lot available to people who aren't just coming in to patronize your establishment.
Right.
So I think they're gonna target a couple key areas that would give us guidance to focus on. So on Union Street, there should be an ability to say this area, like the north section of Union Street, needs either some shared parking agreements or some way to get additional parking available.
Right.
So there are areas that have shortfalls. They did say so Cottage Street in particular has pretty short windows of time on certain period, like the peak times. It's pretty constrained, but the rest of it, the time, it's not. So it should articulate where we see higher demand and not enough supply, and then areas where we have the supply and we just gotta reconfigure or really.
And one other thing you said a moment ago, Jeff, about structure, there'll be arguments on both sides in some cases of retaining a building or letting a building go. And there's pros and cons to both of those arguments. I just hope that we as a city and both sides of that argument today see those pros and cons played out on Parson Street. So the part that the city retained is pretty bad today.
The parcel behind it, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the part the city retained, it's pretty bad. if the city had let it all go and allowed a bigger structure to be built there, there would have been a much bigger upfront benefit to the city.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So if in the end we say we want housing at Maple Street, but Maple Street School has to be retained, you'll end up with another $10,000 bid to get to get the whole property, because somebody's going to put $2 million into that school to convert it to housing. If somebody could level this, and I'm not arguing one side, if somebody leveled the school, all of a sudden it becomes a very valuable piece of property.
Sure.
Because now I can have a blank canvas to build what fits.
Historic preservation was part of that conversation, wasn't it? Or am I imagining it? It was in that, there's a reference to historic preservation in that recommendations document.
It comes out that I think that through their architectural analysis, one of the buildings lends itself better to being preserved and
Oh, it's Center
converted.
School.
Right, and then
Really?
the others are not as critical. I think that the way that it ultimately should come out is that if there is a proposal that would renovate, that would be great, and it'll take off a couple things on the list. If there's a proposal that needs to start entirely new, then there'll probably be a few more things that it has to accomplish. And that's what we've been doing through the exercise, is come up with the criteria. So is there an ability to incorporate any kind of intergenerational use, senior or affordable housing, public parking, or energy efficiency, or
Green space.
Green space. So they're gonna, the next couple of years are gonna be very interesting, because at the end of this, there'll have to be a proposal that goes out and says, here's what we think we want, and then there'll be a scoring criteria to be able to kind of gauge how the proposal will come back. And so it does, my understanding is it will allow for a new building as long as it achieves certain things that pretty much a lot of people wanted.
And see, I love the old buildings as much as the next guy, but there's a time to stay and a time to go. And I've always been a fan of putting the restrictions you might want to put on the new construction.
Right.
So don't put up this kind of a building because it's not going to fit. We'd like to have we're going to require this kind of siding, we're going to require this, so it fits better with the neighborhood and surrounding units.
Right.
If you're going to take the building down.
Maple Street School, though, that is the oldest school in the Commonwealth, I understand.
Lewis Elementary School.
Oldest elementary school, yeah.
It is?
Yeah, oldest elementary
That's
school.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's lucky some other town's gonna inherit that title.
Then we should take a look.
Well, but, I mean, I'm not saying that the building should be retained just for that purpose, but is there consideration being given to its historical value, or are the repairs needed just too great? Or is it somewhere in between?
I think that's up for a developer to decide, and I think it's up for the future use committee to put a value on. I can tell you, I went through the process twice with the Memorial Hall, and things were shifted based on finances, not about actual commitments to housing, how much public would use that building. It was based on $25,000. That's why we have a single standard building there with one business in it, not doing anything as far as reciprocating.
One of the things, Josh, that when Easthampton Savings built its Hadley branch, we demolished, it was ready to fall in, but it was a very old home. And we offered this, I'm not so sure the town required it, but we brought someone in to do a whole pictorial and written history on that building. And then when that was done, we provided it to the Historical Society. So now the legacy of that building is in photos and writing.
Okay.
Now, again, in that case, the building was ready to fall over anyway. But I was jokingly saying, telling what you were saying is, just take a lot of pictures before we knock it down.
And other cities and towns are dealing with this. Hadley just knocked down some buildings where the old performance school was, and
Yeah.
Holyoke's trying to figure out what to do with that school on Northampton Street. So it's like, there never is an easy solution like, oh, geez, we got the perfect developer who's going to do exactly what we want. We're going to make money. He's going to make money. We're all going to get what we want. It's like it's.
But with all due respect to whomever, because I don't know the players, if anyone around this table thinks that the current Memorial Hall is an aesthetic asset to that part of town, raise your hand.
Yeah. No, it was supposed to be down around the hill.
Where is it?
Which one's Memorial Hall?
Right, the massage.
Red Road.
screen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
On
Did not know.
on the circle where East Hampton Savings Bank is, the far end of the massage
Okay,
building.
got it.
Yeah.
Art bar was?
The requirement was to retain that building. That's part of the.
Well, as part of the score.
Right, part of the score.
All right, so, this is great. Wednesday, October 9th. That is 3 weeks away, which may not yet be on your calendar.
It will be.
He's retired, he's very good at it.
Is that the final session?
6 to 8 p.m. at the high school. Do not believe the bulletins which say Pepin, because
Yeah, we changed
people
it.
complain about Pepin, so we're going to high school.
Eastern High School.
I encourage you to be there, it will be so interesting.
And what's
These
the-
sessions have been amazing.
This is the final one?
Yes.
And what's the format? Presentation and then Q&A?
It's often a reminder of, here's who we are, here's what we've been doing, here's where we are in the process. The slide font is very small. Sit close if you want to read.
Okay.
We talked about doing it as an open house style.
Oh, that would be
there-
exciting.
See, there's always, unfortunately, there's always a need to do some kind of presentation
Yeah.
to position where it actually is in the process, but the consultant heard that it was a lot of presentation last time, so it's gonna be more of an open house style. At some point, there'll be some brief overview of the proposed findings and the next steps, but
And what's the time?
6 to 8.
6 to 8.
So there should be an opportunity for people to provide input on
Yes.
some proposed configurations, imagine this world.
And what they're gonna try to do, what we're gonna try to do is give the overarching recommendations and allow people to do one more sort of ranking exercise to make sure
Yeah,
that, right,
yeah,
that
priority.
Right, because with that, so they're putting out all the things that they heard, and then with the final pieces of input, they can kind of confirm, they reaffirm what they heard, which
And
is
it's
the
the
highest priority.
RKG?
Yeah.
RKG is the consultant who did the market analysis, and then Harriman Associates is the lead consultant doing the other work. And then they have Tig & Bond who's doing the parking study.
Great.
So, and I am just gonna put the plug out there that we're gonna have child wash to make it potentially available for people with kids to come. So this is the last real chance to kind of put your dot on the board somewhere.
Love it.
Okay. Follow-ups from last meeting, I'm gonna prioritize the ones I wanna talk about right now. We talked last time about the possibility of supporting the writing of a wayfinding technical assistance grant, and you shared with us that ECA has been working on that beautiful map that's now on the, what do we call it? Is that a pump house thing?
Yeah.
On the board- on the boardwalk. So I talked with Jeff about it to get some clarity, and this year's RFP is not out yet, but it's coming.
Should be coming in November.
Okay, so the thinking is that we could apply for these monies not to take the place of what ECA would be doing to come up with designs and colors and whatnot, but to use the map as a starting point to say, where are the priority places that we should start with? What could we design that would be the most useful for people who are headed to X district, that district? It's like, it's like $10,000.
Yeah,
It's not a lot of money,
yeah.
but it's not nothing, and it would be supportive of the kind of thing that ECA is doing. My understanding from talking with Jeff last week is that Pasqualina is going to be applying for a placemaking grant about the other end of the park by Tandem, to make that a more cohesive, look how beautiful this one side of Tandem is, oh look at this other side, to make that more cohesive. So this would be not quite the same thing, wayfinding, placemaking, not the same thing, but we could support ECA's work by getting some background planning help on that.
When you mentioned Tandem, that's all private though, right? Both sides of that.
Along the,
When you cross Union Street away from Tandem and hit where the ATM is,
Right.
there's a city-owned parcel right there.
Correct.
And that's where ECA is gonna apply for a placemaking grant to
Perfect.
kind of bring that up a little bit on that side. The wayfinding would be great, I think. It's really a foundational piece, so that's all the patterns that we're seeing is, to go through this exercise, with a consultant to find locations for signs and then a general type of sign that you might want to do, and we can front load kind of that pattern. And then that gives us a document that says, look, we looked at this, and here are the locations that we would find something desirable, and then we go after actual later funding to construct some signs, and a lot of communities have done it.
And I think that it's sort of important for us because we are so spread out.
Right.
You know, if you were on Cottage Street, you wouldn't know about Main Street. If you were at a mill, you wouldn't
Right.
know about. I just know that we go to a theater in Providence, and we just go to the same spot every time. We park in the same spot. And so, like, people, oh, Providence is great. Have you been here? Been here? Like, no, we kind of just go to the same things. We don't know.
Yep.
You know, and it's sort of like if they had a sign that said, other downtown zone, other parking, other this,
Right.
we'd
Yeah.
be simply say, like, let's go earlier and explore.
Right.
But yet, it's not, there's a theater right there, there's thousands of people going to that thing, but yet there's no information telling them, hey, this city's cool,
Yeah.
check out the waterfront or riverfront, whatever they have.
During Art Walk, you meet people on the street who are like, excuse me, can you tell me how I get to the mill? And you're like, sure.
Right?
How good are your shoes?
Yeah.
That's right.
You know, so it's like,
But even
exactly.
getting to the mills, if you drove down Pleasant Street, you would never realize what's behind it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. No,
Yeah.
exactly, that's the
So I think
entrance by Eastworks and stuff like that. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
all that little piece of information would be very helpful to people visiting, because it seems like we're building an economy based on visitors,
Tourism.
Yeah.
you know?
And the
that-
idea of Easthampton as truly like, I'm going to Easthampton because of Easthampton,
Right.
not necessarily because this one thing there.
Right.
I think it would help too, though, for in-town people, the people that live in the plains that drive to Springfield and stuff, you know, that, you know, not everybody's in tune with Facebook and this and that, so if they're going down Union Street on, Pleasant Street on it doesn't matter, some other time, they see that sign, it might just jog them a little bit, like,
Yeah.
wait, there's something going there,
Yeah.
you know, and, because a lot of people, we all get in our own bubbles.
Yep.
Right.
So I would like to, when that gets, when the RFP is made public, I would like to get a small group of us together to work on that grant.
Mm-hmm,
Generally in support of this idea?
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. What is the other thing that I cared about today? Do you want me to care about the intern idea today, or can we wait till October?
I could wait till October.
Great. Engagement with the community. So we talked last time about communication. It's that fourth bullet down. Thank you. There it is in purple. The idea of EDIC being a cheerleader for businesses, big, small, new, old, expanding, exciting in Easthampton. Challenging, potentially, to say, and now we're going to have a social media presence. Not impossible. I don't want to spend all my time on social media, and I refuse to volunteer for all of my time on social media. And I doubt that many of the rest of you want to do that either. So I would like to come up with some ways that we can think about EDIC inputting into existing social media threads, or having our own presence somewhere that on some semi-regular basis gets updated, that we are paying attention to what's happening in our local area, figuring out ways that we can be early to know about, oh, this fun thing is happening in the place that's been for lease for 9 months. I like that idea. I think it would be a useful way to fulfill our mission of supporting the economic environment for current and future businesses, residents, and the community at large.
I'm
What are
a
your thoughts?
sucker, a volunteer that might do it.
Really?
You know, my sister, she's on the outside watching it all.
Uh-huh.
She watches all the housing, she watches all the CPAs, she watches
That's
all that
right.
stuff.
She
So
is
that's
incredibly in the know.
Hi. That's where, yeah, exactly. That's where I get all
Hey,
my
girl.
information, is that, you know, while she, you know, does the books and stuff like that, she puts that out in the background.
Yep.
You know, I think she'd like to get a little involved somehow. And I don't think,
Cool.
you know, maybe she's gonna go on a committee, but
Uh-huh.
she hasn't really stepped forward yet. Maybe this would be a little something for her to
Uh-huh.
putz with.
Neat. I like
That's
this
cool.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say that you talked to Mo about this in terms of the
I
chamber?
didn't talk with Mo beyond the last meeting, at which she was
Oh, yeah,
enthusiastic
I'm
about the idea of
paying them to have them do that.
communicating out.
Well, I mean, I think that the observation that the one observation is that the chamber does the ribbon cuttings and they do some promotion of new businesses if they're a chamber member.
Right.
There appears to be quite a few gaps of new businesses arriving without necessarily the welcome to Easthampton or acknowledgement or like, and this is a little bit farther than what we talked about, but like, so right now we have like a city councilor who's going out and doing like 3 questions with all these people. And it could be just an opportunity. So what I see is that there's a couple spaces that are going to become something new very soon. And it would be an opportunity to say, welcome to Easthampton. You're a new business and we support you and you're contributing to our, you know, collective success. It's just a gap that could be filled.
Well,
And I think there's a lot of expanding businesses that are choosing to expand within Easthampton that we're not getting coverage for. So adhesive applications, they made it very smoothly through their second attempt at the planning board, but they basically like doubled the size of their building and chose to say in Easthampton consolidate into one facility and, you know, millions and millions of dollars of investment that no one's really publicizing or acknowledging. So
Right.
there's just a lot of that, and I've seen like all the new businesses. So that's the last thing is that a huge amount of our success is people investing in Easthampton.
I think that's all important. But the wheels were turning a bit ever since our last meeting when we talked about the Easthampton experience. And I, like Gwen, am not volunteering for anything right now.
Uh-huh.
But does that dovetail with internships? And I've been thinking about this Easthampton experience in a marketing campaign that takes on the Easthampton experience of what do we have to offer. Trying to attract John Q. public from surrounding Western Mass to come to Easthampton, just for the experience. Now, you don't have to come here to shop, but we'd love to have you come here to go into restaurants, to do the art walk, to walk through one Cottage Street when it's open.
Yeah.
You know, get an ice cream and walk the boardwalk, whatever.
Yeah.
But the marketing of Easthampton, and I agree with you, Jeff, within that is the marketing of our success stories, like October Company and others.
Yeah, and I could see a quicker way at it. So I see the marketing, I think it's a great idea, and I think we will ultimately get there someday. But I think a quicker path to it is actually to do these small bits of promotion.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes is the word of mouth, or that's the thing people hear, and that has so if you're doing that like for every time someone new pops in and leases a space, like you can get a lot more activity. So it's just another way to get there.
And to Dave's point about the folks who live in parts of town that never drive through town, I mean, some sort of informational piece. It's not just about new businesses, but new projects.
Well,
There may be some people
it's
who don't even know what's going on.
I just noticed that I've got like 6 or 7 little flyers and cards cluttered around in front of my business that people have dropped off, like Prodigy, and I was having a tattoo done yesterday, and the same thing. He's got like promotions for other businesses.
Right.
So it's like I think businesses are everybody's trying to do it in little ways, but I think that it's just sort of like
Right.
Well,
But there's some exciting projects, like the Cottage Street project that's probably going to start next year. That's not a new business coming to town, but it's an exciting project that's going to really change the face of Cottage Street in that section where the gas station is today. One Ferry Street. There might be a lot of people in town that haven't even driven by there and know what's going on. They're moving at light speed right now, it seems.
Right, yeah. Well, I think it's fodder for the continued discussion, but I think the EDIC is in a unique position where you're not a regulatory board, so you don't have to be as objective. So like if you're the planning board, you have to be objective, right? You can't go out promoting like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
You have to be objective, and many of the other boards are tied to that level of objectivity, and I think even myself as the city planner, I'm using the planning department Facebook, I have to be careful that I'm being inclusive, because I'm covering so many broad topics, but the EDIC with the mission could be like, at least
generally supportive and
I
promoting.
think like in the short term, maybe considering something with a little social media presence to interview people who just arrived, or like, why did you choose Easthampton? And then maybe look on a bigger picture. I think like marketing campaign, that's just going to take time and people, and it's just going to be slow. Whereas the mayor wants to promote the City of Easthampton page, which would be your kind of path.
Mhm.
You know, you wouldn't necessarily need to have a huge separate presence, but just, I think the three Qs that Owen's doing is just kind of an interesting kind of angle, and like there's opportunity for there's a lot of new businesses that are poised to arrive, and to welcome them somewhere. So it's just really a thought.
This may be silly, but what about acknowledging people who've been in business a while and send them a birthday card that they can put in their window?
Oh,
Like Boston,
A birthday card?
like Best of Boston, you know, just, oh, okay, so it was silly.
No.
What's your response to that, business owner?
I don't know.
The chamber does do
We
that
did-
today.
Oh, they do?
The chamber
Well,
annually
okay.
recognizes
The thing about
businesses on their fifth
the chamber
anniversary.
though.
Okay, cool, never mind,
Yeah,
I
so
retract.
No, but the chamber, everything you said, Jeff, and everybody is good, because, but the chamber also, I mean, traditionally, the chamber's model was your Main Street merchants, and it was your go-to place. It was like a little bit of a clearinghouse.
Yeah.
But the chamber is also changing their model of what they're doing. So as they kind of go on into a different model, this stuff becomes more important, something to fill the gap.
Right.
You know, and just as we're talking, and I'm listening, you know, before you mentioned the mayor, before you mentioned the word the mayor, I was like, if there's a shared intern with the mayor and the planning department and EDIC, because
Yeah.
you need someone, and then not only that, you need continuity. So like, say you had a internship position was created.
Yeah.
And just say for easy example, it was a senior high school student that did it and did well. But obviously that student's gonna move on. But if you still, at least if you have the position,
Right.
then you can maybe train someone or
Student can train the next person.
or the next sucker, this is what you're gonna do.
Sucker.
Well, you know, I mean,
Well, I think I don't disagree with that at all. I think the idea of an intern is floating out there, but it takes some time to get it off the ground. So it's like
I
looking
know, but
at
once you get that boilerplate,
right, which I think you get the boilerplate from having committee members
Yeah.
start.
Sure.
And I think
Okay.
like we would wait too long. I think to set up like I'm working on it, but it's gonna take. Like the next internship round, I think the earliest we could possibly get an intern in would be January. So I think I'm looking at the theater on Cottage Street, the space on Union Street. There's a couple other ones that are gonna pop up, and it would just be like an opportunity to be like, hey, we're on this committee and we promote like great things happening in Easthampton. So just I just want to lose sight of the opportunity.
What space on Union?
The space next to the barber shop.
Okay. That's been a revolving door lately.
It
so-
really has.
Yeah.
Can you get one that'll stick?
I don't know. I hear bits and pieces, and I heard that there's someone there.
No, there is one there now.
Coming. We don't know who.
No, there's no one there now.
There's not?
No, big
No.
for lease sign
Right,
in the
still
front
up.
window.
That's
So-
new.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, sorry.
Big for lease sign in the front window.
I'm really sorry, but I have a 5 o'clock meeting upstairs.
You should go to your 5 o'clock meeting.
Yeah.
The rest of you who don't have a 5 o'clock meeting will stay here till 5 o'clock. We have 90 seconds to 2 minutes left.
Well, I can handle that. Certainly, they can wait for me.
So the internship idea is something that we've been talking about. We talked about it last time. I talked about it with Jeff a little bit more. We have some early ideas about what the intern could be looking at. Are they on there? Related to the market analysis in the sense of over the course of time, probably doing an inventory of our businesses in town and understanding what are the numbers of employees at local businesses? What are we really dealing with? What can we celebrate? What is really exciting? What's worrisome or concerning? And one of the early challenges to that, if we were to imagine that this is a series of interns, is to design a long-term set of project goals so that each intern, as they spend maybe 15 weeks with us, can see how they are contributing to a larger goal, but they would also, in and of their own 15-week experience, need to understand that there's a beginning, middle, and end to their own work, and it's not just, well, I'm only doing the beginning, I'll never see anything conclude about this. So that requires a little bit of backward planning, which is something that I would like to volunteer us to think about and decide what is something that we really care about that we could define. This is what we would expect to be true after, let's say, 4 interns have worked with us over the course of a year or a year and a half, what we'd like to be able to say. or be able to show. So we don't have to decide on that now, but you have provided me with some early language for what we can imagine might be included in an internship. I am happy to share that early language with you so that we could discuss it more in October.
Okay.
Sounds good.
You don't get to have a report today.
Okay, can I say one thing?
Yeah, all right.
Tomorrow, I believe tomorrow we'll be putting out a press release to say that we got the Green Communities Grant, which is going to fund 2 electric vehicle charging stations behind the mills.
Great.
There's also a furnace replacement at the DPW's wastewater treatment plant, which is an energy efficiency measure. But the 2 chargers behind the mills, it's funding for most of the cost of the chargers, and then we're pairing it with Eversource has a Make Ready program. So we're matching those 2 funding sources together, and then we're still, I've been probing. We applied for a separate grant for 2 electric vehicle chargers behind 50 Payson, and we haven't heard from that one yet. So
That feels
I
like it was
think
100 years ago.
it sure does. My fingers are still crossed that we could potentially get both, which would be able to charge.
Things take time, and if you don't know that they're gonna take time, don't be discouraged.
Oh, I'm not
It's
discouraged,
just
I
that
just
sort of
like-
like you say it like it's like, but.
When was it though? It was like May?
March.
Oh, March?
What was the name of the
That's
grant?
fine.
Green?
This one is
Green.
Green Communities.
It feels like it was 100 years ago because we only meet once a month, and so I'm
Right.
like, that was
Right.
10,000 times ago.
But I mean, just,
Who can say?
Good, because you guys have been working on.
how long
EV
ago was
for a
that
while.
thing made?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Anything else?
2002, and they talked about
You
the
know what?
In the next 90 seconds,
pond and all
anything
that
else
stuff.
popping in East Hampton?
Yeah. Well, look, can I bring up the point?
Yeah.
I was talking to someone who used to work at the chamber in Holyoke, and they talked about vacancy fees for vacant buildings.
Ah.
Oh.
And they said
Yes.
they very rarely are enacted because the property owners go to the mayor and say, hey, listen, come on, and you'd be like, fine, you're right, you're fine with it. But, and because it was weird, I read the article in the Gazette about Northampton not having any
Yep.
vehicles to move stuff along, but apparently there is something in Holyoke, and there's a registration fee,
Uh-huh.
and so the city gets a little bit of money for someone to be registered, but she said it got people moving.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was an
What was it you
editorial
heard
about.
about Cambridge? Didn't you hear something about Cambridge?
Yeah, they
too?
have one of those too. They fine people for having the space sit empty for a while,
Yep,
which I think we should do.
right.
And
So-
especially, we might have a mayor who won't necessarily bow to that kind of pressure.
Yeah, exactly. So is that a zoning issue? Is that an ordinance thing? Is that a city council?
There seems to me to be a city
Like a
ordinance.
general
or
ordinance,
council,
yeah.
My wife is running for city council.
I just, I don't know, I'm kind of mixed about it, Casey, just from the standpoint of, sure, I can look at some properties in East Hampton where the owner is just absent, forget it, and said, let the trees grow, the shrubs go, who cares? I can look at other owners who are actively trying to do something and just aren't striking gold with it.
Those aren't the kind.
Should they both be fined equally?
I don't know. I
No.
don't know.
So
It's a nugget. You can refine a nugget. How
Wait, I'll give you the Vernay, the
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, see you.
they have a beautiful storefront. You don't even know about it. It's next to Coco.
Oh, yes, yeah.
It's not open.
Oh, the eyeglass place?
It's never open.
Kate thinks it's a,
Oh,
They own they own.
yeah, front or something.
No, they own the building.
It's never
Yeah.
open.
Okay.
They have an office right by the mall,
Yeah.
on the way to the mall. They tried to set up a second shop. It was too tough with staffing and needs. Oh, you need this test. That's down here. So they basically they clean the property up. They make the money they need from that building from the apartments. It's an investment property for them.
Yeah.
So there's no economic base out of that unit, but yet they spent some money on it. They made it nice.
I mean, that's not an empty unit either.
But they might
So it
argue,
doesn't look like,
but they might argue it's not vacant.
it's not, that's what you said.
But you know what I mean? It's sort of like,
But on the other hand, I look at Steve Robinson, okay,
Yeah.
next to the barber shop.
Yeah.
That guy's actively trying to market that location, actively.
Yep.
constantly working with realtors. I think I've been by there 3 times and I've seen the realtor showing it to somebody.
And
So
and
she'd be fine for vacancy
Well,
as opposed to,
you
well,
get
respect.
you get a 90-day, grace period.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think,
you've
I
met
think
with
what we're saying
somebody.
is that it's not all black and white, not all
Right.
written in
As
stone,
opposed
and there's
to-
wiggle room.
As opposed to.
Yeah.
What about if it were like unemployment, where you had to show that you're
Good
looking
due
for work?
diligence.
Exactly.
Exactly.
You have to prove.
Good point.
Right.
Yeah. I think what we're addressing here are the flagrant, right? Whatever.
Flagrant.
They're flagrant, not vagrant.
People who are just obviously doing nothing.
Flagrant vagrants.
Right.
Yeah.
Vagrants, yes, very true.
Very generous.
Would we like to discuss this
exemption
further in
What's
October?
that?
Yes.
policy. We have a very,
Yeah,
we
I
have a
like
very
that.
generous
Yeah.
exemption
Cool.
policy. Where
Let's
you
do
come
it.
to a board and you say, look, this is this is my position, and
Yeah.
I'm not just ignoring this.
Yep.
You know, can I get a waiver for this fee for the next year?
Right.
Yep.
You know, and then the next year, okay, well, it's still vacant, but here's what I've done, and
Yeah, they know.
here's
For the
which.
next quarter.
I like that analogy
and-
of unemployment, you know.
And what she'd said was, it did get some of the property owners to do something.
Right.
Right.
And it's sort of like
I
this.
think it's a great idea.
Because we don't want to form a redevelopment committee or, agency, but we want to get a dialogue with these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get things going.
Jeff, did you have anything else? We didn't want to cut you off.
Is it fine? Are you okay? You forgive me?
This plate's
Okay,
pretty full, I
October.
think.
October. Save everything up for October.
Yeah. Hold that thought for 30 days.
All right. Would anyone like to move that we adjourn?
Moved. Seconded.
Outstanding. All in favor of adjourning this meeting?
Aye. Aye.
Great. So great
Thank
to
you.
spend time with you. See you on October 15th.
Thanks.